Let's do it.
Let's do it, man. It's so great to see you. Thank you very much for doing this. I have lots of questions, but I just wanted to start by reading the Andrea Gibson poem that you've posted, and I've read it. You've posted it in a couple of different posts, so it's clearly got a lot of meaning for you. It's got a lot of meaning for me too. So is that okay? I'm just going to read the poem.
Sure. Thank you. I'm honored. Yeah.
Well, anything by them is, Okay, so this is a poem by Andrea Gibson. Every time I ever said I want to die. A difficult life is not less worth living than a gentle one. Joy is simply easier to carry than sorrow. And your heart could lift a city from how long you've spent holding what's been nearly impossible to hold. This world needs those who know how to do that. Those who could find a tunnel that has no light at the end of it and hold it up like a telescope to know the darkness also contains truths that could bring the light to its needs. Brief astronomer, adjust the lens, look close. Tell us what you see.
Okay, you had to make me cry to start out.
Tell me why that poem resonates so much with you.
Well, it really kind of, maybe it encapsulates my story in a lot of ways. And the transmutation or the transmuting of darkness to light, and the work that involves, and the lifetime that can be spent on that, which I think has been my journey.
Yeah. Would you say that's your life's work now, looking with the understanding you have at this point?
Yes, that has definitely been my life's work. Yeah. Thank you for seeing that and reading that poem, because it really got me when you did that.
Yeah. It's a pleasure. So, okay, I really want to dive into cults.
Okay.
That's okay. Let's do it. Okay. They've always fascinated me. But this is the first time I've had the opportunity to talk to somebody who has been in, I want to say, like, the classic form of cult, because cult can be applied to all kinds of areas in life. There are certain recognizable definitions of cult, but it can be applied in lots of places. But when I say, like, the classic cult, this is what I understand has been your experience. I know that it's known sort of familiarly as 2x2, but amazingly, it doesn't actually have a name. Right. Which already makes it stand out for me. And what I want to know is, what age were you when you understood you were in a cult?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I would say 68, 69. I really was, it was affirmed to me that it was a cult, even though I left, and my life's work was to liberate myself from the cage that it made of my mind.
Yeah.
It took until 2023 when a scandal broke, and I suspected it, but it took until 2023 when a scandal broke where a minister in the 2x2 cult his laptop and his phone and things revealed an absolutely terrible truth of sexual abuse and assault and control. And he was a very highly esteemed, what we call worker or preacher. He was an overseer in what we would colloquially call the truth. and so that sort of broke for the first time in my lifetime. And this is a sect that came out of Ireland at the turn of the century, back in um, 18 or yeah, not the 1900s, 1907. So, so this broke the story, and people began acknowledging that it was a cult. And it was found, of course, that the sexual abuse began to be revealed, and it was absolutely, um, rampant, just endemic. And of course, I didn't know that, although um, that isn't what made it a cult, because it wasn't a sex cult. It was a very fundamentalist, straight-laced Christian sect. And that's really what created the environment for this kind of sexual abuse and child abuse and all the other abuses, the mind control and everything else to flourish over generations. And so the breaking of that story was like the big crack in the universe. And it validated and affirmed my entire life's journey. An amazing synchronicity for me. Because I knew, I left and I knew and I understood many things, but to actually say this was a cult, these are my people. This is where I came from. And most of us, because it wasn't like on a compound or the Heaven's Gate or the sensationalism around these really obvious kind of bizarre, and this turns out to be bizarre too, but bizarre cults that you think of as a cult. Or at least I did, like, the Manson, phenomena and all of that. It was really hard to come to, to actually name that, and really difficult to name that, for even for me, who left decades prior to this event. And I left in silence, without a voice, and without any help or any support over my lifetime, without any acknowledgement, any validation, any affirmation ever that my instinct to liberate myself was absolutely spot on. But I did that alone. Nobody had ever even heard of this cult. When I went to a therapist over the years, they never heard of it. And of course, they weren't educated or didn't have backgrounds in religious trauma, or spiritual abuse, and it was never addressed. I was never given support. I never had any of the tools that people have today, with all of the, deconstruction of evangelicalism and all the different. What's really happening today is this is being sort of exposed everywhere. And but this was my life's journey.
What did you know it as at that moment? I mean, I want to know the moment when you thought, I have to get out of here. And at that moment, what did you know it as? And what were the elements that made you say, I've got to get out of here? And then eventually, when you were 68, the word cult was used. And did that immediately, like, the penny drop? So that's like 4 questions in one. What did you know it as? If cult was a word that came much later, what did you know it as?
Well, I was born and raised, so that's very different than being a convert to a cult.
Right.
And most of us survivors of this particular sect were born and raised, because it became very insular, and it had very few converts. It was just sort of generation to generation to generation. And so being born and raised, I didn't know any different. To me, this was the worldview I was given. And so I knew it to be the truth.
Mhm.
And so when I became very conflicted as a teenager between what I was told to be and how to be and what my very dim future was
Yeah.
as, as a girl and a woman,
Yeah.
something inside of me could not just drove me, drove me. I was compelled, but I didn't have the conscious awareness
Right.
to know or understand any of this. This is what, this was my reality. And so I believed I was making a choice between heaven and hell when I left.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and I chose hell
Why did you choose hell?
consciously
Why did you choose hell?
because what came to me as a 15-year-old is that I was taught that this was reality and that this was the only way, and that to leave it would be to be condemned, that
Yeah.
there were no other options.
Yeah.
And so in facing that, what came into my mind, nobody nobody nurtured my mind. Um,
Yeah.
but what came into my mind was that this doesn't make sense. I couldn't logically make sense of this. It was a double bind, is what it was.
Mm.
And so I had to decide out of that double bind if this is what God is and this is what the truth is, then I choose something else. I choose hell. I'm willing to go to hell rather than accept that this is reality, even though I knew it was reality.
Yeah.
You see how that worked?
Yeah, I
So
see
I
how that
made
works.
that choice, and then I basically proceeded to go to hell. So,
Okay, yeah,
it
so at what
yeah,
age did it stop making sense, and how long did it take for the not making sense to be the bit where you chose hell? What was that time?
it took me
Yeah.
about 16 years of leaving and a lot of acting out rebellion and
Okay.
kind of just because once I left, everything that I had no container because the
Yeah.
only container I had was I had rejected. So therefore I had no way to navigate or map the world. I had rejected the map I was given, but I had no new map. And so I had to find my way without a map. I had to
How old
bushwhack.
were you at that point? How old were you?
I was around 15 and 16, and yeah. And I began to
Okay.
run away. I ran away 7 times when I was 15
Okay.
from
Okay, so
home.
and then went back, or somebody came and got you?
Well, um, yeah, I would end up back at home and end up back at home, and then eventually I got pregnant and I left home, at like 17 with a baby.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
so that's kind of how it evolved. It wasn't like I made a statement, "I'm leaving this religion because I've deconstructed it, and now I know."
Yeah,
So, you know,
nothing as clean as that.
so it took about 16 years before, um, my drinking and my, substance abuse or substance use,
Yes.
the misuse of substances,
Yes.
um, became, sort of I hit a wall. And, and there were many conflicts that contributed to that because of the way I was raised. And so it was really against my values in many ways, my drug use and various things that were going on in my life. I was working as a radio disc jockey,
Mhm.
middays and as a music director, but that was against our religion. So there was deep, deep inner conflicts, and, so anyway, I hit the wall with that, and, so that was 16 years later, and that's when I began the journey of consciousness
Yeah.
and awakening. And it
Yeah.
was through that process and, getting into a form of recovery that I began to connect with myself and began to discover who I really was deep inside, even though who I really was had been what drove me and compelled me to leave and to run away and to say, I'll go, go to hell. This was driving me the whole time, was something deep inside of me that said I needed liberation and that this was not right, didn't make sense. So I began to make sense of it in early recovery. And I was around 30 years old when I got sober. So that began my real journey of consciousness. And so through that process, I would say it took about, it was an ongoing evolution all the way up to today. But in that process, it took about 5 to 10 years, give or take, for me to really come to terms with myself and say, yes, I've left and I'm okay to a degree. I also had a near death at age 19 that was a major contribution to my ability to survive and the fact that I'm even alive today. That helped keep me alive and taught me that I was loved absolutely and unconditionally, which was a very foreign concept. So that also played a part, but it was in that practice of consciousness that I began to that it all began to come together and I was able to make sense of it and understood and came to terms with my choice to leave and began to understand that it wasn't me, because I was taught that I was condemned and I was wrong and I was bad for all the choices I was making. So it was a process to begin to understand that those choices, that I was not wrong and that this was my choice. But then on the other hand, I had to accept that my parents were still in this.
Yeah.
And I was, and I was not estranged from them. I was in contact with them, with my family. So even though I was estranged in a sense because I left the truth, and that means in my own mother's heart that I was
Condemned.
Yeah, which is a very difficult thing for a daughter.
Yeah.
And so I so I had to come to terms with that, and then I sort of came to this recognition that, well, this is their path, and I respect their path, and this is the path that they're on. And so I didn't really come to this complete gestalt of this is a fucking cult.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not their path. They too, they were victimized.
Yes.
They were pulled into this. My mother was, she came from a alcoholic home, of course, which we didn't know for years and decades, and this was her solution. And this, and my father's mother is the one who, was the first convert who joined it. And so then they followed after her. So he was, a child of the cult when my mother married him. So that's kind of what happened to her. She got pulled into that with him. And, but that recognition took until really this whole scandal broke. Even though I knew it, it was like, this is real. And more and more, it sinks in. This was what this was and what it is.
Oh, so
all in
powerful.
the name of truth,
Yeah.
And that's what we call it. Didn't have a name, but we called it the truth.
Yeah. How powerful is that? So let me get this straight. I'm going to reflect back to you just now what you've just said. So from birth until around 15, this was the water you swam in with no words or recognition, no naming that water. It was just your life. And then at 15, there was an awakening happening somewhere inside you. It was like, this is not right. But the choice was heaven or hell. It wasn't, I'm trapped out freedom. It was heaven or hell. So when you eventually left, and so there was no sense of people trying to get you back in, you left freely. I'm putting that in inverted commas.
No, it was a real process of struggle between myself and my parents, and especially my mother, and them trying to control me and prevent me from leaving. and mostly emotionally and psychologically,
Okay.
with guilt and other various things, and also their absolute belief and
Sure.
their buy-in that that their children are condemned if they leave. So
Mm.
that was the struggle, and they had to just accept because of my, because of who I am.
Yeah.
I was, I wasn't going to conform, and I've never been a conformist, and that's been my nature since birth. So,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so they had to finally accept that, and they could have, um, shunned or, just put me out of their life
Yes.
completely, but they
Yeah.
didn't choose to do that.
Okay.
They just chose to continue to be examples of the truth and what's real, and that, I'm living a wrong life, but they're there, to be examples of the light and the way and the truth. And if that makes sense to you.
It
Yeah.
makes sense to me. So
Hmm.
so then at 16, you chose hell over heaven, and you were running blind really for
Yeah.
16 years with no name for what you'd left, and no formation of understanding that what you'd had was trauma.
Other than than the near death experience,
Can you
which
tell
I
me
think
about
is
that?
it's an important piece. When I was
Yeah.
19, I had a anaphylactic reaction to penicillin in a
Yeah.
doctor's office one day and nearly died, came near death.
Yeah.
And in that experience, I experienced a greater power that had nothing to do with what I'd been taught. It was
Yeah.
absolutely incongruent, out of context, just completely not a concept whatsoever in my mind or body or life.
Yeah.
And that power came, and in that experience, I was shown that I was loved absolutely and unconditionally, and that had nothing to do with any church or any belief system or any religion whatsoever, that love is a birthright and that it was mine and that nothing could take it away. And all I really had to do in that experience was to accept it. And I didn't have to accept it even. But I had the
Okay.
experience that accepting that truth of being loved and whole and complete, absolutely, um, was heaven, basically. That was my heaven, you know?
Mm,
And it was a state of consciousness, it was not a place.
mm.
And so I was only 19 and I was a young mother with two little girls, babies. And I had absolutely no context for that. So for
Yeah.
6 months
Right.
after that happened, I wandered around. I wandered around and said, What am I supposed to do now? Looks like your internet connection is unstable."
Yeah, I know. It's
Okay.
crazy, isn't it? I'm in the middle of London. Anyway,
Okay.
we're
So anyway,
stable,
yeah.
so
S
we'll stabilize it.
so I didn't really know I didn't know what I was supposed to do with that. I had no context. And then I went to my first visit to a therapist, a mental health clinic, to say, "Wow," I had, and they're like, "Oh, here's some antipsychotic drugs." Yeah. "Here's some antipsychotic drugs," which, being somebody who was friendly with substances, I'm like, "Okay." And I took them for a day or 2, and they completely, disoriented me, and so I threw them away in the trash.
Yeah.
And so I knew then not to ever tell anybody about the near-death experience.
Mm,
And this was before the near-death experience was in the mainstream.
yeah.
It was probably 7 years before the Reader's Digest article came out, the book came out about life after death, which
Okay.
7 years later I read and went, "Oh my god, that's what happened to me."
Yeah.
Yeah. So that
So
was part of the picture. So I did have that piece, even though I didn't have context for it, and that context has continued to grow to this day.
okay, so when did you begin to have context for it? How long did that take? for you to be able to place it somewhere and grow from it?
Well, 11 years after it happened, I went into a treatment center for addiction. And in that process, I was introduced to the 12 steps. And that was a no-no for me. It was like, no fucking way.
Yeah.
They're showing me this thing on the wall and it has the word God in it more than
Right.
once.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, thank you.
I don't think so.
And so in the struggle to come to terms with and accept that I am I am an alcoholic, I am an addict. And, we can say I have substance use disorder, whatever. I'm an addict. I cannot safely use substances. Okay. And that's part of it's a generational thing as well. But in that process, I needed a solution and I was in a great struggle. And in that struggle, I was like, there's no, I could not have, there was no God that I could have because where I came from. And one night, I just was in this massive struggle within myself, and this awareness and epiphany came flooding in, and it was like, love. God is love. Love, that's your God. Remember, remember what happened. Remember, that's God. And I was like, oh, that God. Okay, that God. Well, yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that you used the word God in a few posts, and I thought,
Hmm.
okay, so my question was going to be like, what's your relationship with God now? But I would go further now and say, are you comfortable using the word God, knowing what your God is now?
Well, that was the struggle for me. Like I said, it was in the 12 step, and I'm like, it was a problem for me. And some of the archaic language that was used was a problem for me. But as I came to terms with myself, um, and my own process, I no longer care what we call that power. And
Okay.
my concept of it today is this.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
this.
For
It's
anyone listening,
brackets. Whatever it
it's
is
just,
we're talking about, it's not
yeah,
that. It's
yeah, yeah.
this. It's
Is
a
this?
bracket and it doesn't have a name. And you can use a variety of names. You can call it love, you can call it higher self, you can call it, you know, um, nature, you can call whatever
Yeah,
you want to call it. It's this. It's
yeah,
brackets with a
yeah.
blank space. And and that is what I think of it as. And it's not contained with any religion or any belief system. It's actually for me an experience. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so fascinating to me, uh, that getting to that point where you're okay with a word again because it's not about the word. That's
Right.
definitely a part of the process that I recognize, because I recognize the antipathy towards the word. I was talking to the lovely Sally Reed a while ago, who is um, she's a Celtic Christian, and
Mhm.
she is a person of great faith and great intellect and great heart, and this is how she realizes her life. And I said to her, I have such trouble around the words that you're using, not the feeling behind them, but the words, because I have such an immediate, it makes me go whoa, like that, like back. And to get to a point where it's okay, like they lose their sting,
Well, the
is really
beautiful part of it,
inspiring.
thank you. The beautiful part of that is that language is not reality.
Yeah, that's
And
beautiful. Say that again.
language is what we use to try to talk about reality. It's
Yeah,
not reality. So when I use the word God and anybody has a reaction to that, they're really reacting to language.
yeah,
yeah, and whatever that word means to them. But the language is actually can be a cage, which it was for me, because my
Yeah.
language, basically my first language is the Bible. So, and I'm of late, I'm looking at that and going, "Hey, I can own this." That's a very poetic voice,
Wow.
very lyrical, but but see, the freedom and the liberation of language within you
Mm.
is an
Mm.
amazing thing, because then words become, you know, a tool for liberation and a beautiful thing that frees you instead of something that contains you and defines you and keeps you captive and defines reality, because it's very you know, it's fluid. It can be
Yeah.
fluid. It's like an ocean instead of, you know, a cage or yeah. But that's yeah.
That's such a radically strong place to sit because obviously language, words are all around us, and anyone can inadvertently or intentionally fling out any old word at any time, right? And so if we can't take that relationship to them as you've just explained, it leaves us in a state of vigilance at all times,
Right.
right?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
and it's also
it's really
another way,
interesting.
another angle and way to look at that is to when you recognize that you are not your thoughts.
Yeah,
That's where language is too, you know, but
yeah,
it's either a transcription or a transmission.
yeah, yeah,
It's either energetic or it's prescriptive.
yeah.
But yeah, it is. But you know, I still struggle with it because, of course, words are very important to me.
Sure.
And the invention of my own poetic, which has evolved over the process of all of these years and decades. It's the invention of my own language to describe my experience and to understand, you know, what I went through and what happened to me and all of that. So it's like the invention of my own. You know, I was deprived of a private language. I did not have a
Mm,
language within myself because I
mm,
had this one given to me, this prescriptive language, and I had no other way to talk about anything. And when I try, and so ever since I left the religion, the cult, I've had to translate myself. It's like coming from a foreign country into a
mm.
foreign country. It's like coming from another place to a foreign country where you don't know the language, because I was raised in this cult language. And so inside I've had to translate, well, how do I make people understand? You know, because for me, that's the language I was given. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah.
It makes total sense. And is that one of the thefts of cults? The theft of
Yes.
a internal language?
It's a very it's a violation beyond comprehension.
Yeah.
That's what we steal from children raised in these extreme fundamentalist religious environments, or even less extreme religious environments. We don't allow them to name their own reality or to
Yeah.
find words for it. We require them to think with our words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another word for that would be voice, presumably.
Yes.
Yeah.
They steal our voice. We don't even know there is such a thing as our voice.
Yeah.
There's no voice. So how do we find
Direct
that?
reality. Right. And there is no, yeah. How do people find it? How do you find it?
Well, for me, it begins with the journey, and I think for others, you know, if I'm sharing with anybody who has that, you know, terrible experience in their background or is leaving that or struggling with that. For me, it begins with going within and the inward journey. We don't even know what that is, but it begins with very, very simple things of like naming our feelings, of knowing we have feelings. Like, oh, my stomach hurts. Um, oh, that must be fear. Oh, that's what that is. So we have to find words. We have to find our words, and they have to be our words. And we have to have a place to speak. And I was able to go into the 12-step rooms and speak myself into existence. I was able to tell my story, to find my story, to listen for my story, to look for my story, and to begin to voice a story. And then I was caught by that story.
Yeah.
But that's just another story, see?
Yeah.
But yeah, what we want is the connection with that true nature and true self within. And to me, this is how we find it. Yeah.
So to return to another really strong word, cult, there's such power to that word. When you heard that word for the first time in relation to your childhood, did you understand immediately?
Yes. It was like finally, finally somebody's called it what it is, kind of like what we're experiencing in America right now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fascism.
Yeah.
Oh, but it's like, no, that can't be.
Yeah.
This is my
Which,
home. This is my country. This is my flag, you know?
right. Which is why I preceded all of this with naming 2x2 as your kind of classic cult, because exactly my feeling from over here over the pond is that there's a cult, a national cult that you're
Yeah.
living through right now, which bears the same marks. Do you want to just define cult for us?
Um, well, I'll refer to the bite model. Stephen
Yeah.
Hassan is a very good model for what a cult is, and I would suggest anybody struggling with that to look him up and look up the bite model, BITE. And I think it's all in there. But a cult is a closed system. To me, it's a closed system, and there's all the doors are locked, and there's no way out, and everything. Um, it's like a double bind. You can't. Everything takes you back to the cult. Like no matter what you think, you've been programmed in a way that you can't get out of that vicious cycle of think. You know, it's and it's also like you don't know that most people they have no idea that this is what they're in. Like
Yeah.
and I'm watching all these people in the 2x2 cult now discover and wake up. And that's a very interesting process for me, having done, having had this be my life's work, to watch them. And they're doing it with support and with validation and with words that they're being given to help them, which is wonderful. And I'm so grateful. And so I just never thought I would live to see this day that people would be freed from this. And so so they just like me. It's like the you're just so immersed in it. It's so cellular in every part of your life that you can't see outside of it.
Would you say that that moment of realization is as traumatic as the damage experienced within that dictated reality?
Oh, it's bittersweet.
Okay.
It's vindicating
Yeah.
and validating. And
Yeah.
so it's less traumatic for me because it basically just said, here's the period to your sentence, Kelly. And I'm like, thank you, universe. I never dreamed I would see the day that my life's work was actually right here in front of me. It's shown to be absolutely valid and true. And everything I've done and all of my choices have absolutely make sense and are actually amazing and incredible. And oh my God, the child I was to who I am today is just an incredible journey, and I can see that. And so this gave me that piece, which is a great gift that I'm really grateful to have. But at the same time, it is also traumatic because in my own personal family, this is what created all of the dysfunction and the trauma within us and the estrangement that I now have with my family. And it's tragic. And it's completely destroyed my family.
Are the majority of them, and I'm so sorry about your brother,
Thank
are the
you.
majority of them still in the cult?
No, all of my siblings left, but unfortunately they didn't leave.
Okay.
So they left and then they found mostly sort of mainstream Christianity as a replacement or a substitute, without really deconstructing what happened or having the awareness that it was a cult. They haven't been interested, to my knowledge, in these new exposures. It's like they're just not conscious. And so they didn't ever, you can leave a cult, you can walk out the door. That means nothing. You will repeat that in all of your life forever. You have to literally leave that cult from inside you. And they really, as to my knowledge, I have not seen evidence that they have. Yeah. It's a similar kind of thinking, rigidity, denial, inflexibility, lack of openness. Yeah.
A Hotel California.
Yep. Living it up at the hotel. You can, what does it say? You can
check out any time you want, but
you can never leave. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
But you can leave, but it's not as simple as checking out.
No. Yeah. and so knowing exactly what it's like and the risks and the shock and the work it takes to wake up. What's your relationship in terms of your family, in terms of with compassion and forgiveness and understanding of their choice? Do you see it in the frame of another way of surviving to not wake up, knowing the shock of, or at least the projected shock?
I understand
what it's like
it.
to realize the truth. Sure. Okay.
I understand it. I just really quickly want to tell Carl that I see you and thank you for your comments. And my, the compassion, the love, and the forgiveness. I love them, but I had to, in the past decade, distance myself from them. Really not my mother, who died in 2021, but because she was surrounded by them, and then she had dementia. So I'm at a very beautiful place of closure with her. But that really happened prior to her death and on a really energetic level. But I had to distance myself from my family because not only am I the survivor of a cult, but I'm a survivor of a family cult, and I'm the scapegoat.
Oh yeah, I really understand that.
Yeah. So in order to preserve myself, my sanity, and my own recovery and path, I had to distance myself, which actually empowered and opened up access to me, to parts of myself that just by remaining in proximity to them were oppressed.
Yeah, I really understand that.
Yeah.
And talk to me about rage.
Rage. Okay. Well, I hope all of you get there. I encourage you. But there is a place when it comes, that fire comes, that is so necessary. However, it's not about acting out of anger. It's not about unconscious acting out of anger, or rage, where it requires a level of consciousness and self-awareness. But there comes a place, and it did for me, where the rage comes and the anger. And that was necessary to my evolution and my process and my life and my voice, and to have a voice, and as a writer. Though I knew at 6 I was a writer. It wasn't a possibility in that world. So, when we get to that rage, which is very, appropriate,
Yeah.
then it's like a fire that empowered me. I can only speak for myself. It empowered me in having a voice. And it empowered me in standing up, out of victimhood, and,
Okay.
out of, that constant censorship. To me, it seemed necessary to get to that place, to have enough fuel and
Yeah.
energy to go, fuck no, man. Like, no, we need the no,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there a time when you would have said, they stole my life? And is there a time now when you would rephrase that?
Whoa, that, yeah, that's a hard one, because
Okay.
it feels true. It feels true that,
Mhm.
but on the other hand, it's also something I understand at some wordless level, that is my true path to who I've become today, and that it has served that, and served my process of evolution in, like, incredible ways, that I would not be who I am today without it. And
Yeah.
it's absolutely, it's my purpose or something. My life's
Yeah.
purpose was to do this. And so, how could, maybe you didn't, maybe you actually gave me my life's purpose.
Mm. Yeah.
Maybe you didn't steal it. Maybe you helped me find it,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I don't feel a lot of bitterness or anything. I feel a lot of acceptance and love. Um, and also there were pieces of it that, were good, that I keep deep
Like
inside
what?
me. I had a love for something greater than myself that I was connected to, the real one, the one that I found in my near death experience. I
Yep.
connected with that somehow as a small child,
Mm.
um, and that connection was always there as sort of a, it's kind of like, I'm kind of a mystic, maybe. Yeah.
Kind of. I take the kind of out of it.
So,
So one could say that, however warped, you had an early language for the great unseen, which when you then met the great unseen, you already had a line of language, like,
it wasn't
just in,
really language. I had
okay,
a felt sense, and
okay,
a unspoken connection that
okay.
I was told was in language, was something else.
Yeah,
But I had that connection to that, which I think we all do, whatever that
absolutely.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
I
And
did have that. And in fact, they groomed me to be a worker and a preacher because I had, real insight.
I thought
And-
maybe men. I thought only men could be workers.
oh, no, no, there's brother workers and sister workers.
There
And
are sister workers.
the sister
Okay.
workers are subordinate to the men.
Obviously.
Oh, yeah. But there are women, preachers. Yeah.
Right, okay. Is it still going, 2 by 2?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
despite the big blow up that
Yeah.
for the first time brought the word cult. Okay, it's still, but it has no home, it has no name, right?
Yeah. They meet in homes and they meet in what they call conventions, which are farms or ranches or more remote places where they go for 4 days out of the year. And they meet in homes. Like we had a meeting when I was a child in our home. And we went to other people's homes and we just meet in their living room. And there was like at one time 35 of these meetings in the city of Denver, which nobody has any clue exist. These are people in your neighborhood. They live next door. So we're very integrated into the larger society, but we're not. But so yeah, they meet in homes, and they also have what they call gospel meetings, and those are supposed to be for converts, but nobody outside very rarely attends. But those are held in halls or schools or rented rooms. And so they don't believe that, you know, they should have a church building. Mm.
Okay, so
So there
it's
are
like
no
they're
buildings, and
invisible.
there's no name. And the fact that there's no name is very convenient because they're not registered and they can't be sued for all the sexual abuse. And there's no way to track the financial reality, which is another rabbit hole, which is, there's a lot of money.
Are you active around exposure and dismantling of 2 by 2, or is that not your pony?
It's not really my pony. I am active in sharing my experience and being available and accessible. And I do take part in a Facebook group for X 2 by 2 survivors, where there's now about 5,000 members, and I'm able to share and benefit people in that way.
Mm.
Yeah.
Have you
Does that make
experienced yeah, absolutely. Have you experienced backlash at being such a vocal member of the survivor community?
um at first it was a little hairy.
Okay.
Because my voice is way downstream, okay, of where a lot of people are.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people need to leave and go to another Christian church and find the real Jesus,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
instead of the actual real Jesus. But anyway,
yeah,
that's another
yeah, yeah,
topic. But,
yeah, yeah.
um, so it's been a process of navigating that and understanding how to more effectively communicate so that I can, help, and I support everybody's process, whatever that is and whatever it takes. And so, I had to recognize that and sort of, you know the context that I'm in and try to be, on the other hand, there are some young people that are behind this group that absolutely blow my mind. They're so phenomenal. They have done such incredible work to dismantle this. Kyle and Carrie Hanks and Mike and Abby Prussick. They're absolutely amazing young people who, like, I'm like, how could they even have this consciousness at this moment, at this time, at
Right.
this age, you know? But so they've gone through their own process. But there's a lot of things available today for
Mm.
for people who want to deconstruct and question the beliefs that they've been raised in.
So there's an active effort to dismantle this
Yeah.
specific cult. Okay.
Well, the effort is, yeah, because they're
Mm.
they're being confronted with the sexual abuse mostly. And for me, it's always like, well, let's get beneath that and see where that really comes from, because that's
Yeah.
all about the extreme indoctrination that I received as a child to make me a willing victim. Come on, how does this happen? You have to have the environment for that to flourish. And you know but yeah, so that's being confronted and has been confronted, really strongly, more and more strongly. There was a group of amazing women who were behind that. Cynthia Lyles, who's a private investigator, and Lauren, and I can't think of Lauren's last name right now, but she was a victim. And Sherry was another one. And they were incredibly brave and did amazing things to bring this out to the public. In fact, you can see you can look to Nightline. There was a documentary that sort of
I tried to
shows
find
them.
it. I couldn't.
I know it may not be, may not be available.
No, but I'll keep looking. But I did find a really great podcast whose whole MO is cults, and both the hosts are cult survivors. And they did one great episode about 2x2, and they had watched the documentary, and they cited quite a few of the women who were survivors of abuse, and who were incredibly courageous in explaining exactly the grooming, really, that had got them into the mindset where, I mean, one of the things I read was that when a worker came to someone's home, they could ask to sleep in the children's room, and you had to say yes. You didn't even question. I mean, there's so much instance of abuse within cults generally. Do you think that cults are just an excuse for violent misogyny, or do you think violent misogyny erupts within cults because there's such a distortion of reality as a baseline?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I think it's a byproduct of the patriarchy. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And this, like the cult I was raised in is like a microcosm of what the patriarchy is. It is a microcosm. I saw an amazing video by a Black woman just the other day who was speaking to her white sisters and doing a whole breakdown of how everything that's happening in the nation today is about getting the white sisters back in line because of their fear of the white, race being, our birth rate is going down. And while the Black and brown birth rate and other goes up and up. And so the whole thing is to get us back in line, hence, eliminating abortion, except everything they're doing. And I know that in my heart of hearts, I know. And I recognize the night that Trump was elected, I sobbed in my bed because I knew that's what this was about.
Yeah, I recognize it in my heart of hearts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read a great article by Jamila Jamil recently, and she talked about how women are, the fact that we are not submissive. We are not naturally submissive, and it's much easier to argue that men are naturally submissive, whereas the system has been attempting to make us submit for well over 2,000 years. And if it was our natural state, we would have given in by now.
I agree. That would be, I would agree with that assessment overall in general.
Me too.
But there's a whole new thing where they're saying that, the whole problem with white feminist women is that we don't have a strong enough man to, we need the warrior. Oh my God. And it's like, no, of course I need a strong man. I need a man who can meet me where I am in my strength. Okay. But that doesn't mean I need some man I can submit to, which is how they're basically reframing it. It's really insidious. It's women who are forwarding this message and buying into it and believing it. And then that leads off into the trad wife thing and all of that. So, and I'll tell you what, in 1969, when I was 15, this could not have happened. The women who spoke up and broke, in the 2x2, it wouldn't matter if they spoke up. Many women have been killed for that, including in the 2x2s, not outright murdered, but killed, their spirit, their soul, their bodies, and they've ended up in ditches because of the way they were groomed. You see what I'm saying? So for them to be able to come out today and for something to actually happen, well, there's a lot that's had to happen for us to get to that point.
Yeah, there's a lot of death. and violence and destruction. I'm very pleased to say that I'm noticing more and more here in Substack and in my environment, and that there's so many, and I wanted to say humans who happen to be men, because baseline, I meet everyone as a human first, and then you can biologically split from that point on to talk about details. But I'm meeting more and more men who are just really bent on learning how, finding their voice as human males. There's a guy called Nick Parrow who's on Substack who's running this great series about, I can't think the phrase he uses, but it's about the kind of emotional maturity of men with this sort of language. And I'm so heartened. Mark Typo is another. He's been running this dads get together in his hometown and posting these photographs of these beautiful men with their beautiful children gathering in play areas to speak and talk about their experience as men, and just seeing this upswell of what to me is the true heart of man, which is, in my experience, men are way more emotional and sensitive and sweet. Like, women are fucking hard asses.
Oh God, yes. I think we both agree.
So beautiful.
We both agree and know that the patriarchy is not men.
No,
the patriarchy is what has enslaved and captured us all, men and women alike. And it is both our liberations that is absolutely necessary.
Absolutely essential. Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah.
We're almost at time. I just want to ask you, because I keep feeling it as we talk, just talk to me about your nervous system.
My nervous system.
Yeah.
Can you say more about your question?
Like,
how do I regulate?
How is it in recovery? And yeah, like, I'm not quite sure what age you are, but in these, 6 decades?
Yeah.
How is your nervous system feeling, having been through everything it's been through?
Thank you. This is the name of my Substack is There's Nothing Wrong with You, and there never was.
Yeah.
And that's deeper than it seems on the surface. So for me, regulation has to do very much with this connection within myself, where I am absolute whole and complete and aware of my true nature. And that's a very, very strong and secure connection that has grown over many, many years of doing this work. And I believe it's accessible to all of us. And so that connection is my anchor and my ground. And that's my ground of being. And so that's fundamentally how I regulate. But I have to remind myself and do practices daily to keep that awareness and to remain conscious and to seek that consciousness. So, I do a variety of things. I walk, I take walks, I move my body, I meditate, I read, I contemplate, I write. Writing and using my voice is really a big part of it. It took a lot of work, there's the psychological level of work, there's sort of a layer that we have to get through that I had to do. So it just depends on where you at. We're all in different stages of this process. But at this point, I'm very, very connected within myself. So I would say I'm internally resourced, and that makes all the difference. So if I'm looking for something out here, then I'm going to become unregulated or dysregulated.
Yeah.
But I know to go back within here. And so when I start to become dysregulated, I can return to the breath, or even if it's not the breath, I can just return to myself,
Yeah.
and go within, because it's all in here and it's not out there. And that's what keeps me regulated, just knowing that.
So
Yeah.
beautiful. Can people reach out to you if they are in any relationship with cult, cutting out of a cult, surviving recovery from a cult? Can they reach out to you?
Sure. And make sure you do, if you do that in my DMs, that you tell me that. And so that I'm aware. And and also I hope that you would be interested in subscribing to my Substack, because there's a lot in there that could be helpful. And I'm very happy for people to reach out. Yeah. Very.
Yeah, and having done a very deep dive into so much you've written, it's so the experience is just unfolding and unfolding and unfolding as I go deeper and deeper into your experience, what you've lived, your regulation of that, the context within which you now put it. It's the gift that keeps on giving. So thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly, yeah, we're at time. I just thank you so much. It's such an honor for you to share that. Thanks for trusting me. It's really beautiful to meet you.
You're welcome. I'm really, really, this has been a great experience of being on the other side of the mic. So thank you. Yeah.
Loved it.
And I really admire the what you're doing with your consistent live stream interviews. Keep it up. It's absolutely incredible and phenomenal. And yeah, everybody should follow you. So
Thank you.
thank you.
I get to meet all these amazing people. I'm just like, I can't believe it's like what I just ask people and then I get to meet them. It's just like, it's my favorite thing apart from writing.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And you have a new book coming out. I was just going to say, I'm usually the one who does. I mean, I do interviews, and most of them were in print, and so I'm sort of moving toward doing. I'm not doing them consistently like you are, but it has to speak to me. But we should talk about your new book coming out. We'll get to that.
That would be great.
All right.
I would love that. Fantastic. Okay.
All right.
All right. Loads of love, Kelly, and I'll see you in a
Thanks.
sec. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.